liberty a value? This was one of the questions I had to resolve in my defense. And I decided to give an answer which is a little bit more everyday language than the answer I gave in the moment of my research defense. And for this purpose, I would like to start from the example of robotics and AI to make the idea, the concept more concrete. What is liberty? This question is directly linked to the question, what is a person? As an introduction, I found a video on current development of robots with AI and a certain autonomy to answer questions and to interact with human beings. I leave a link here and you can use it as an introduction. For example, do you know Chia Chia? Imagine a conversation with Chia Chia. How do you know if Chia Chia is a person or an object, a robot? Leave aside some shortcomings in her aspect, just in the way she interacts with you. Another example, how do you know you speak to a bot and not to a human being when you are on the internet? What does actually autonomous AI mean? Tom Dieterich in the Business Insider said that computers won't just take over the world someday, unless we design them to. So even if he's working on autonomous AI, he believes that's something we are designing into robots or other types of machines. But is that really so? This is a problem of philosophy, of how we define words. But when we say autonomous, we mean it is coming out of itself. It's not motivated by a program. And who has the potential of becoming autonomous? I mentioned the aspects of robots before, and we could think they are still plugged in. Are they? They are not autonomous in the sense, in the physical sense, they need energy, in the sense of electricity. We could neglect this idea, but in any case, if we think about memory development and xenobots, they are based on organic material. They are not machines in the traditional sense. So what is a person? What are the conditions that decide that something is not a thing but a person? In the Western world, traditionally the definition was based on the species being a human, Homo sapiens sapiens and so on. Then there are some other characteristics like having a memory, having feelings and the potential of deviance to act against rules and norms, to take decisions in an independent way without being prepared for a certain question or a certain situation, and also having an organic form. Today's robots have already challenged all these points. Perhaps deviance is the most interesting. Can a robot go against the rule, which would mean that could a robot be autonomous without being designed for it? Or if it is designed for it, could it go beyond its design? Another question comes out when we interact with bots and robots and AI. When they take ethical decisions, on what are these ethical decisions based? a new series of robots, the RKs, are capable of making life and death decisions, evaluating moral consequences and civilian death. I leave you another link here about Sophia, who is asked an ethical question. In defense of the project, we have to say she was given this question before and probably prepared for it. But in any case, based on what would she take this decision? Especially when we speak about ethical decisions, not moral decisions. Moral decisions are habits, culture, customs, what is good and what is right. Depend on the context of a culture and the situation. Ethical questions are unique, often very specific, very existential. In the sense of, if I do this or if I do that, I will become a killer, or I will become guilty of the death of this person, this other person. Or I will become a hero, I will become a salvator, and so on, a savior. So deviance needs a meaning, in the sense that when I do something that is beyond norms, because it does not exist any norm, or because I go against the rule because I think it's better to do that, I do that in respect of who I want to be, and in the respect of what it will do to the other as a person. So the way I treat an object, let's say a very nice sculpture or a table or a car, does not define me necessarily as a person in an ethical sense, but it defines my behavior. It defines me as a brutish person or a more nice person, as somebody more thoughtful or less thoughtful. But the way I treat another person, that makes me into a killer, a savior, somebody who supports life or does not support life. And this is when we have these three elements: deviance, meaning, and otherness of another person, which creates a meaningful encounter. In this encounter, some form of opposition is manifest to the rule, to the norm. And this opposition is meaningful, and this opposition is in an interaction, in a discourse, not necessarily a linguistic discourse, but in an interaction with the other person. A person is an entity that is cautious about its liberty and manifests itself as being cautious. And now we have three elements that I found in Plotinus, and where he explains very well what liberty is. Liberty is a potential. It is not a measurement for something of good and bad. Liberty is the potential, the a priori condition we say in philosophy, which means the precondition before anything else, that you could become a person. And when you use this liberty in the way that you perform as a person, you act and execute this deviance, this creative form of reacting to a situation, and you use it to interact in a constitutive way. That means that you use it in a way that creates a meaning for you and defines you as a person. And that is the test of your personhood, which is always at the same time the test of another person. Because, for example, in the situation that you save someone's life, it means that you also test that you are a proof that this other is a person, because otherwise you would just have passed, or you would have taken your decision in a more rational way. That is the idea behind liberty as constitutive for personhood. Therefore, liberty is not a value. It's not a standard. It's not a measurement for anything. Not in the sense that it is it is possible to simulate and repeat. Liberty is a condition, a potential to act and orient actions based on a unique and independent meaning. This meaning is unique for me. It cannot be translated to anybody else. And liberty is a condition to constitute a new reality. The new reality is me today, which constitutes me again. It restitutes me or makes me even more the way I am or less. It transforms me into a new form. But every time we take an ethical decision, we create and recreate ourselves, who we are. Therefore, liberty is not a moral value, but an abstract concept in ethics and existential philosophy. It cannot be measured directly. This was one of the major problems I had in my research. It can only be measured by observing a certain type of performance between two persons. It cannot be measured objectively in the strictly scientific way, and a further problem in my research. It can only be measured in a sense of interpersonal interaction. It can only be performed. These were the challenges I had to deal with, but they are inherent in liberty. Therefore, ethical questions cannot be solved by algorithms. Yes, we cannot program a robot to become ethical. If a robot will ever become ethical, it will do it for some reason in a spontaneous way. We can perhaps promote a robot to become ethical, but being ethical is something, it is a kind of mystery, yeah? Something that exists but we do not know why. And liberty is constitutive for the self of the decision maker. Ethical questions are constitutive for the self of the decision maker. What I meant before. Ethical questions do not decide if you're good or bad. They decide who you are, which goes much beyond of being this or that. And they require a free will that decides on who one wants to be by taking such decisions. So it's not somebody who is telling you you should be this or that. It's what you really want to be. And you manifest that you want to be that by being it. I hope I did not make the confusion bigger, and I gave you some inspiration of what I understand with the concepts of liberty and personhood and how I resolved these issues in my research. Thank you.